Guys, here we go. The head gasket come in today. We're gonna start taking this head off. I've already disassembled a little bit. All I've really done is take the breather off. I took this metal shield that goes by the gas tank off. I didn't take the throttle cable loose, so it's just hanging there, which is fine. Right now I'm only about 6 bolts in. I'm gonna take the muffler off next. The 4 bolts bolting it onto the manifold down there, back two looks a little tough. I don't know how to get to those. We're going to try to just wedge stuff in there and see what happens. What she said. Why don't they put it on tight? Okay. Alright, what's the joke here? Oh my God! How many? Oh yeah. Both on the glass. Alright guys, let's catch you up on where I'm at. So I disconnected the coolant lines, the radiator and fan shroud I pulled out. That all just came out with a couple nuts here, and then a couple bolts. Fan shroud and radiator I did pull apart just because I wasn't really sure what I was doing. Looks like you could probably just remove the whole thing at once by removing these braces. But I wasn't sure what all I was doing, so I just removed each piece. Now I'm removing this. These are standard, and by this I mean the fan. And these are standard rotation bolts right here. And they just get loosened, and this should release the fan and the pulley. That should just pop off, a little bit of encouragement. If it doesn't, I do have a little puller. And then I can access the actual water pump bolts. And then the whole water pump will come out. As you start taking it apart, you start peeling back the layers of this turd onion. And you can see kind of what happened. You can kind of piece it together. I'll show you what I mean. Number one, the water pump looks like it might be replaced. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at it a little bit closer. But we've got some damage on one of these fan blades. Clue number one. Actually, that's clue number 3. Some damage on the bottom of the radiator that doesn't appear to have any leaks, but damage nonetheless, almost like it was caused by a fan blade. And we have this cracked shroud that has been put back together with some kind of baling wire. And of course, we have the broken hood and the bent brush guard. I don't think it takes a genius to understand that someone rented this thing as being a real jackass and caved something into it, which caused the radiator to get pushed into the fan to drain all the coolant out after it hit the radiator, causing it to overheat. They probably slapped a new water pump on it just to make sure everything was good. Old fan, the same old radiator if it didn't have a leak, but it probably had a leak. They probably patched it in some way, or who knows. Clearly though, there was a loss of coolant causing it to overheat. They probably just kept on running it and was like, well, we'll just take it back. It was probably ran again, honestly. Hopefully the head isn't cracked, but all signs point to I might be screwed. All right, so that's off, just 3 bolts. I'm gonna put the 3 bolts back in the head where they go. I've been replacing all the bolts as I go and putting them back in their respective places because I'm terrible at losing bolts. We'll see. Now we're gonna take this valve cover off. Should have taken that bracket off at the bracket for the muffler, so I'll take that off. Then the valve cover bolts should be these, that one, that one, that one. They're all 10s and 12s. Every bolt so far and nut on here has been a 10 or a 12 so far. All right, once you get these 6 bolts undone and these 3 undone, it should just come off. And there's the top of the head. There's my head bolts. One thing that I have not done is buy new head bolts. That could be a major blunder. Again, they're very hard to find for this particular tractor. However, these are not, I repeat, these were not torque to yield bolts. The only fear would be that any of them are damaged coming out or don't feel right. So they should be able to be reused. They're not, I repeat, not torque to yield. First thing I gotta do is get the out with those 3 bolts. Rockers will come out, then I'll be able to access all the head bolts. And I assume I'll have to unscrew the injectors too. Let me go check the service manual on that. I mean, obviously I will, but let me check it and see exactly how to do that. Again, service manual online, there's a link in the description, and that's for all 3TNV motors, the 74, 74F, and the 80F. All right, guys, 2 rapid fire mistakes sure to ruin your day and mine. When you're taking this head off, obviously the injectors have to come out. Don't have to come out of the head necessarily unless you want to clean them, which I do. But just take the lines off, and when you do, make sure that you're holding this nut really well, or you'll have what I have, which is the return line breaking from the return. Now, I don't know if I can braze that back together or not. Maybe someone can give me some tips. Take the lines off. That's all you got to do. All the return line is held on. It's all one piece. Now I can take the head off after I take those rockers off. Dumb mistake. By the way, this is a 17. The line is a 17, the actual fuel line, and then injector itself, I've got a 7/8 on there, so whatever that is in metric, 21, I guess. Get these rockers off and try not to break anything else, because I'm afraid that's going to be something I'm going to have to order from China, and I really don't want to have to wait that long. But oh well, live and learn. All right, one thing we'll want to do is to make sure that the push rods are numbered. I'm showing number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from the back, and that they are all kept in order, because they will go back in the same guide. Guys, when you remove this cylinder head, you have to take the bolts out in order, and I'll have to go see what that order is. Normally it is outside to in crisscrossed, so normally it would be something like this one, 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 and then the middle one. So I was right. That's how it's removed. This is number 1, and there's no loosening sequence. You just go in order. Again, they're not torque to yield, and that's going to be a lot bigger than that. 14 it is. Alright, those are out. The head should be loose. We'll see how loose. And I did put those in order as they came out, because we'll put them back in the same order. Let's see what happens. Come on. There it goes. Okay. Alright, we'll take a look at the gasket here in a minute. There's a little scoring on this cylinder, the one with the fluid in it. None that I can feel with my fingernail, but I can see it. The other cylinder, back cylinder, I can still see cross hatching. Of course, I can't see that cylinder. I'll have to turn the motor over for that. All right, as I look at this cylinder, there is a little bit of scoring visually, and I can feel it slightly with my fingernails. I don't know how well that's going to come across on camera, but if anyone can see that, tell me how bad that is. Is that bad enough to warrant a rebuild? Or can I run it with a little bit of blow-by? This one has the same scoring, just a little bit more of it, but the scoring in this cylinder is not as evident to my fingernail. Like, I can't really feel it. A little bit right there on that one. And then on this back one, there's a little bit of scoring right here that I can't feel at all. And you can still see the cross hatching on that one. So the back one's perfect. Front one has one little score on this side, and this one has a couple scores that I would deem, you know, something to worry about. Guys, I'm gonna be honest, with a diesel engine, especially in a small tractor like this, I'm not concerned with a little blow-by, and I'm not concerned with a little scoring. It has compression, and it seems to be running fine. Let's check the gasket. I can see some corrosion in the oil passages right there, or I don't know, that might be a coolant passage. Either way, I see some corrosion there I'll have to look at. All right, hopefully y'all can see this, front of the engine, rear of the engine. I don't see a break in the gasket. But these cylinders right here are obviously burnt around the gasket. The head mile lifted. Certainly hope not, because that would indicate that it's probably warped. I don't see any obvious blowouts on the gasket. See some crud. I hope no one was dumb enough to put any type of stop leak in this thing. Again, it looks like the head lifted to me, as opposed to no until I get this gasket scraped off. All right, guys, I'm convinced that that little bit of coolant we saw in this middle cylinder was due to when I lifted the head. I think some coolant probably came out, just dropped down in. It probably came out of the head. There's no visible defects with this head. I haven't found any cracking whatsoever. I'm going to look over it one more time and scrub it just a little bit more. And I checked it with a straight edge across this way, across that way, down this side and down this side, and I saw no visible signs of warpage either. What could have happened, and I don't know, this thing's a complete mystery to me, but what could have happened was, if you noticed, the head bolts were completely different. When I was taking them off, some were tighter than others. Could have replaced the head gasket on this previously after they ran it hot from the damage I showed you earlier, and might not have torqued the head down right. And I know it sounds silly, and it sounds like wishful thinking, but that's a real possibility. Now the only other challenge I have is the fuel return. You saw I broke that. I don't know if I have found that some of the parts from the 3TNV80F interchange, as far as gaskets and stuff, if this does, I can order it from that. Those seem to be maybe a more John Deere specific, which is going to have more support. I will tell you the 80 and the 76 are different, even though they look very similar when you're looking at parts physically. And let me show you an example of that. I was by trying to find a head gasket. These two head gaskets looked identical. It's got a little bit of a bow in it. I don't think that'll be a problem. I found this one, which is for the 3TNV80F, and from China, and the shipping said 2 weeks. Got here in like 6 days, so it's fine. It only came with this one gasket. I needed all the other gaskets, so I found this kit, which goes to the 3TNV76, and it looks identical. All the holes line up. Everything is exactly the same, except for one glaring issue. You can't tell it from this side, but from this side you can tell. I guess that's the difference between the 76, 80, and 74 is the actual cylinder size. The cylinder size on the 76 is smaller. But all the other parts seem to be interchangeable. So I do have a good gasket here. All right, guys, it's time to start reassembling. Blocks clean, heads clean. One thing I always do, especially if a head gasket's blowed out or we have any real issues with cleanliness, or I like to take a hose and go ahead and get all the coolant out of the engine block. Number one, I'm putting all new coolant in it anyway, so I don't want to mix any coolant. But number two, if there's anything left over, anything I might have scraped down into a coolant passage, anything that might still be in there, I just don't know about it, gets all that flushed out, and I just flush it. I do one of two things. Either, depending on the motor, I'll put the hose in there and just wash it all out. Sometimes, in this case, I got my pressure washer nozzle, and since it's so small, I put it in each hole and shot not full pressure. I didn't turn the pressure washer on. I only had the hose coming through it until clear water started coming out. The return piping that I broke, I did find that locally, so it'll be here in a couple days. She's on there. There's two dowels, so that's good. Guys, I have to take this back off, and I'll show you why. I'm glad I didn't go ahead and start tightening anything down. I did use some water and some liquids to clean this. There's liquid down in the holes for the head bolts. What they'll do is cause the head bolts to tighten up early and give you false readings on your torque spec. So I need to get all that water out. I'll get some towels and some compressed air and we'll get all that water out. Ooh. Guys, that would have been awful. So guys, I'm putting these back in the same holes. I got them all laid out where I know what went where. Clean the threads real good when you do this. Even if you have them brand new, make sure you have the threads are perfectly clean. Any deviation of a clean thread will cause the torque reading to be off. Go to tighten these, the put back in opposite of what we took out, so we start in the middle and we crisscross going out. Mentioned these are not torque to yield bolt. That means they have a very specific torque rate, torque setting. There is a torque sequence. You torque them twice. I did forget to put just a drop of oil. You're supposed to put a drop of oil. It can just be lubricating oil, setup oil, whatever, on the threads. So 1, 2, first two I'm going to do. And we're going to 22 pounds, and then we'll come back and we'll do 44 pounds. All of them at 22 pounds first. got them all torqued to 43 pounds. I'm probably going to go up to 45. I think it says 43 to 46. But what I'm going to do, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and go to 45 with my torque wrench. I just want to make sure my torque wrench is strong enough or is calibrated properly. Because when you're only talking about 46 pounds, being off 2 or 3 pounds is a big deal. So I'm going to get a second torque wrench as well, which I don't have with me. But we can go ahead and put the rockers in. Go ahead and put the screw arms and the push rods in. Get them setting up there so we can put the valve cover back on it for tonight. All right, time to put these back in. I need to clean them up real quick. One thing I forgot to mention is don't lose these little caps that go on top of the valve springs there. If you do that, you'll be really screwed. I didn't show you valving the lash. Is that what you call it? Valving the lash, Russell?
Sure.
Lashing the valve, but it's pretty simple. It's just like any other motor. It's got a set screw in the middle that tightens and loosens, and then a lock nut. I'll put a link in the description of the service manual that has all the specs in it. The valves in this is a 0.06 to a 0.006 to a 0.01. And you can see how that looks like right there. And you just need some basic feeler gauges for it and 3 hands. All right, let me see if I remember where all the bolts are for these. These 3 go in this side. Okay, I think that's good.
Get a 12 over here.
Oh, they want to make sure this muffler didn't rattle off there. It's mounted in like 5 different places.
It would be heavy to be that small.
Right there. I don't want to put too much on before we put the water pump on.
Got a gasket for it?
Yes, I do. It should be sitting right there behind it in that plastic bag.
Your seal on or dry?
The one that came off of it was dry. They had that little dab of seal on, I guess, to hold it, but
Yeah, hold it where they could put it on there. Wait, what goes on this?
oh, I'm glad you said that. They literally called out that you have to have a special O-ring for that. Not you can't use just a regular O-ring. I got one. We go get it, neighbor. All right, we have got it back together. I haven't put any of the coolant fan. Let me take this out so it doesn't sling in through Russell's skull, resulting in death. Probably all this will rattle off and fall down. That's fine. No coolant in it. We're just going to make sure it cranks. Prime fuel system. We turn the fuel on. Underneath that shield, there's a little lever. See that lever all the way over there? It turns straight down.
All my worldly goods to you.
That should be the fuel pump. It runs a lot, so I don't know if how long it runs. I think it won't stop.
10 to 15 seconds.
Yeah, I think it's 10 to 15 seconds.
It's been that.
It's been about 5. Yeah, there's some fogging hole. That's probably better for this.
Hey, once that blow-by quit, I mean, it just about 5 or 6 puffs and it quit.
Yep. But where's that coming from? That shouldn't have any. It shouldn't have any smoke.
It wasn't smoking. Well, it's just heat.
That wasn't heat. It doesn't have
I couldn't tell where it was coming from.
It doesn't have any heat. It doesn't have anything in it to steam. All the fluid. I drained all of it. It's coolant. That's the problem we were trying to fix.
Yeah, because the thermostat
because it was
had all that on
pressurizing the system.
it. Yeah, look at it come out here.
I don't know. Maybe I'd put a lot of brake cleaner on it. Maybe it's just burning off.
It could be. I was trying to say, put it back together.
Thought we're back together.
See if it runs hot.
Yeah, they got to be playing with their second.
So guys, we reassembled everything. I didn't record that because it goes back on the same way it came off, just in reverse. I've got good news and bad news. The good news is a little puff of smoke. The good news is that it runs better than ever. The bad, and it's a lot quieter after lashing the valves. Runs strong, no issues. The bad news is that it is still blowing exhaust into the coolant. Just not at the rate it was. But that's only because that particular valve, that particular gasket has not blown out yet. But I didn't fix it, so I don't know what to do now. Again, the head did not have any visible cracks, anything I could find, and it did not have, to me, it didn't seem warped based on the straight edge I used. Now, it's a little tiny head, so maybe I just didn't have the right equipment. I'm afraid I'm going to have to take the head back off and take it to a machine shop and have them pressure test it or whatever they have to do to see, make sure it doesn't have any deficiencies. There is no, I did an oil change, and there is no coolant getting into the oil, and there's no oil getting into the coolant, which means I very likely don't have any block issues. What I think the head is just ever so very slightly warped. The massive amount of pressure that this thing's under, I don't know what compression on one of these will be. Whatever it is, it's probably just enough to lift the head, just enough for a little bit of gas to get by. And the problem is that if it's pressurizing this, it's not that big a deal because it's not that much pressure. But what that exhaust gas is going to do is void out any of the water that would go into the head. It's going to keep it from going to the head, and the water's just going to circulate through the pump. And then the head's going to get super hot. The water's not going to get hot, so you're never going to know because the temperature switch is never going to activate. Otherwise, I can get a whole new head with new valve springs and valves already installed for about $750. And then of course I'd have to get new gasket. It'd be about another $900 to get just a new head altogether. I let it run for a long time earlier. It didn't seem to run hot, but again, the head might be getting extremely hot, and all the exhaust gas might be pushing the coolant out of the head. Also, if anyone knows a good place to put a temperature gauge in this tractor, let me know. I don't know. I don't want to put it right there where the temperature switch is because, again, if this is happening, that's a bad place for the temperature switch. You know, I've always, dealing with gasoline engines, of course, completely different. I've always put them in the block or the head. But guys, we successfully changed the head. If I had to do this again, it would take, I don't know, about 5 hours to do start to finish. And it looks like I'll have a chance to do it again. What'd you say, buddy?
Did you fix it yet?
Oh, yeah, it's perfect.
Can I get on it now?
No, it's really not fixed, son. I'm sorry.
Are you going to buy something that doesn't need fixing?
Probably not, buddy.
Why?
It's just my style.
Your style?
Yeah. But never say die. I'm not going to give up. It can be a really good tractor. I just have to do some work. All right, guys, we're done. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.